No problem.
I have never had these issues before, but it wouldn't load. It just kept saying loading, loading, loading. And eventually I got out and I got back in again. Still had the problem, got out a second time, got back in again, and then it appeared to work. All right. I've not seen that happen before, so all right. What I've tried to get on screen here, and we'll see it in just a minute. Can you see a Visual Studio screen up here?
Yes.
All right, because I'm going to see this is, I tried bringing this up, and when I right mouse clicked on it and said that I wanted to bring up the code, it just froze like this. It's happened twice. So I don't know what the heck is going on. Something. All right. And this is more for Keegan, for your benefit. But Mr. Smith already got back to me on my email and said, as far as he knows, the class that you will take in fall will be a Node.js class. He is going to try to talk to Mr. Gudmested and see if he can get me the name of the book or books for the class and get back to me today. And Evan has not gotten back to me. All right. And he'd be the one on the first semester class. Okay. So if it turns out that, again, I can't see this, I cannot get in here right now. So if I can't go in and look at the code, well, that's going to pretty much make it kind of tough for what we were going to do for the rest of the class. But let's still take a look at what they talk about in here. So this first example starting on page 616, and I don't know if I changed my share, so I'm going to change it right now. All right, so hopefully now you can see we're on page 616, and near the top of the page it says an enhanced customer maintenance application. Again, I'm going to try bringing up another program after this. If they all keep locking, I'm wasting your time keeping it here as I try to sit there and figure out why it's not working. But we'll at least go over the rest of this chapter. So it says we're going to present an enhanced version of the customer maintenance app that we looked at in the last chapter. Okay, so what's different in here? Well, again, ideally, you can look at this and you know what's different. First off, again, we've got to get customer, and that's what we have here. We've got to get all customers, which we aren't showing here, but that would show all of them. The customer ID, you can see, is set up. It's either a read-only text box or it's a label. All right. The state is now a drop-down. Plus, we should have something in here so that it makes sure that these are numbers. As mentioned previously, one of the key things that's in here is we have to put this into a try-catch block. Hopefully your instructor wasn't that dumb that he never mentioned this to you. But if you look at that example that's right there in blue, and I'll click off, but this selected index, what this means is when the form first loads, don't have anything selected at all as far as the one you want. So selected index, the first thing that you'll find in there in this state combo box should make sense to you would be Alabama. And Alabama is actually considered state 0. But if you set this to -1, there'll be nothing at all in here. All right. Sometimes, and you probably have seen this if you've ever filled out a form on the internet, what they'll say at the top in here when you first bring it in, it'll say, please enter a state. And a lot of apps do it like that. And the reason they do it like that is if they don't, if Alabama in here, for example, is the default, sometimes people aren't even smart enough to change it. All right. So they've got the wrong state in there. All right. So again, what you'll notice when you look in here is, again, most of, not all of it, but most of the code that's in here is pre-written. So what is it? Well, how about this? This is checking, this is that customer not found. So again, we've got I don't know how many customers. Let's assume 100. And we put in there 1,000. then this is the code that's going to hit. You're going to get a message box up that says, no customer found with this ID, please try again. All right. This is what's going to hit if you come in here and you put in something non-numeric. There's a big difference. This is valid data, but it doesn't have any matches. This is invalid data. All right. Okay. And again, if you want to cancel the edit, boom, there's the code that runs. Just cancel edit. So look at this. All right. So this is when you're coming in here, and notice if is valid data. As you could probably guess, that's a Boolean field. So it's going to go in there and it's going to check to make sure everything that you put in here is valid. What does that mean? Well, you can virtually put anything in here you want. You could virtually put anything in here. You could virtually put anything in there that you wanted. So you can check for blanks, but other than that, there's really not a lot. I'm sorry. There's really not a lot that you're going to be able to check for. All right. Okay. And but in here, you can check to make sure that's not empty. And in here, you could check to make sure that either that's 5 digits or 5 digits, a hyphen, and 4 digits. And that's pretty much what they're talking about in here. All right. Now, we talked a little bit about this in the past. Hopefully you have at least a little bit of an idea of what that is. And when you get a concurrency error, that means that more than one user is trying to access the same database or the same table or the same record or all of them. All right. Now, typically, if we're working on, let's say we're using that sales orders database that we have. All right. And what we have in there are, let's just assume we have 3 tables: customers, products, and categories. That's it. If I'm working on the categories table and Keegan is working on the products table and Angie's working on the customers table, we might never get or have any kind of concurrency problem. All right. But what happens if I'm in the middle, I'm on a categories table, and now I remove a category because there's nothing in there? All right. Now, Keegan is doing something in his table, and he actually has something that's going to use that category ID that I just removed. Then there can be a problem. We have to let the user know there was a concurrency problem and probably the update didn't take place. All right. What you never want to have when you're working on this stuff, and I don't know if I mentioned it to you or not, is you never want to have what's considered to be orphan records. An orphan record would be if you had a customer record that was referencing a category ID that no longer existed. So we remove the category. Because what's going to happen when you try to print that out? It's going to go to the database. It'll find that there's no category that matches that, and the app will crash. Typically, what happens when you remove something, like if you remove a customer, all right, you can say what you want, how you want it to cascade forward. In other words, you can tell it to cascade null, which means that if any other table tries to reference this record, they're going to get back null. And normally the program won't break, but you should have something in your code that says null. You know, like here we have this, we would catch a null exception where you could come in and say that customer has been, or that category has been removed from the database, something like that. All right. You can, what normally happens though is what's called a cascade delete. And the only way that I can put this, and it sounds a little cruel, it's like if you kill off a parent record, any child records are automatically killed. So in other words, if I kill a certain category, the system will go and look through all other tables, and any table that's utilizing or using that category, those records will be removed. That's really dangerous to do, as you'd probably guess, because if I do that, I might remove some customers who owe me money, as an example. So you typically don't want to do that. All right. So this is what they're validating in here. And typically notice is present. So you want to have something put in there. So if you leave it empty, it's a required field, so you're returning false right there. Same kind of thing with the rest of these. All right. So some of them are very simple to do. This is what they're doing for the state. If it equals -1, that means you didn't choose a state. All right. But the other stuff that's in here with the name and the address, most of that stuff, hopefully at least, it makes a lot of sense as far as what they're doing and how they're doing it. All right. And notice here, this is where they're coming in here and they're trying to fill this up. And they're saying an SQL exception. When there's an SQL exception, typically something's wrong with the database. All right. And a lot of times when something is wrong with the database like that, what you want to have happen is you don't want to let the user even know that. You just want to say an error occurred, please try later, or something along those lines. All right. In the last chapter, in chapter 18, you may or may not remember, we went in there and very simply, we went in and we created that data grid view. And when we did it, basically I said to you, it's kind of like a spreadsheet, and it showed us every field and the value of every record in every field. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. In other words, as they mention here, you can modify the properties of a data grid control so that, for example, it only shows those fields that you want it to show. Plus, and this is a key thing right here, these checkboxes here, when you enable adding, then a lot of times what will happen, you'll see this in a little bit, is this will put in hyperlinks for you. So over on the side, it'll say add, edit, delete. And then if you click any one of those, it'll allow you to add a record, edit a record, or delete a record. All right. Let's see if they show an example here. Well, here's where they're coming in and they're building it. So again, by default, when you come in and you add this data grid view control, it's not going to come in and do a lot of, editing for you. So here they're coming in with a date and they're saying the way that they want the date to exist. All right. So you can tell the format that you want the date to be in. This is some of the stuff you can change. I'm not going to go over them. Hopefully some of them make sense. What you do with sort mode is, and you're going to see this in a minute, if I put sort mode on each one of these, that means that each one of them in their heading at the top would have a hyperlink. If you click on the hyperlink, it's going to sort it in ascending order. If you click on the hyperlink again, it's going to sort it in descending order. All right, you can make something read only, etc. Thought they showed an example in here. They're still building it. All right, but you can go in and notice here, you can come in here and you can format things. And it may not sound like a big thing, but as an example, I can come in here and if I wanted to, I could go in and set up a format structure for my zip code. All right, and I could tell the system only accept values that, for lack of better words, look like that. All right. Now, pretty much the last thing they talk about in here, and you are going to see an example of this in just a second, is what I like to call a master detail type of thing. So what this is going to do in this example is these are actually two different things that are showing here. This will allow you to bring up any customer. So you can go in there and notice there's not a get all customers. There's just a get customer. So if I put 27 in there, it's going to come in and it's going to put in the name of customer 27, the address of customer 27, the city state zip of customer 27. Then down here, it's going to show me all of the invoices for customer 27. All right. It used to be called parent-child. It's master. For a long time it was called derogatory type of terms like master-slave, which is ridiculous. So typically it's called master detail. All right. And again, you can see some books will still call it something else. When you do this and we go back, this is what it's going to look like. All right. Now, in an ideal world, if I brought up customer number 20, I'd have thousands of invoices in here. But they're just showing you this just so you get some kind of an idea. And again, the idea is as soon as you change this from 20, let's say, to 15, this will automatically change, which will necessitate this automatically changing. So as they mention here, it's a master detail form that displays the invoices for a selected customer. All right. For efficiency, it doesn't retrieve any data when the form is loaded. Rather, when the user enters a customer number up here, then the invoice data is retrieved. Because the application doesn't let the user add, modify, or delete, the binding navigator has been omitted. So in other words, this is read-only. This is the kind of thing that you would want somebody, maybe a manager, to be able to look at, or even a marketing person to be able to look at. But someone typically in more of a managerial type of job where you don't want to give them the ability to change anything. So you'll notice, if you remember from the last chapter, you might remember it, you might not, but in the last chapter, we only had one table in here. Now we have two. Why? Because customers is our master, invoices is our detail. Again, there has to be typically some kind of a field in common between these, and you notice they both have a customer ID. All right. And again, it'll do a fill, get data, fill customer ID. And again, with that @ sign, it's saying that it wants to do a parameterized query, or it wants to be able to fill that thing up at runtime. And as soon as you make a change, all right, again, it's saying it wants to be able to update. All right. So much of this code is similar to what we've already looked at, but again, you'll notice there's a try catch in here. All right. And I guess that's it. Let me go back and see if this actually ever came back up. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can run this. Well, I can show you. I tried to link this thing up during the break, and it just plain wouldn't link. Everything was working fine yesterday, and now for whatever reason, it's not. So let me get rid of that. I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's running, and just nothing is happening. If I stop the run, and I try to look at the code, all right, I can look at it. When I tried to hit the F2 button, it blew up, but this is the same stuff you saw before. In other words, don't set a state when you start. If you run into any kind of database error when you're attempting to load, say what that error is, come back in here, and what are we doing? This is checking to see if you put in a customer number that exists. And if you did not, it's just giving you an error. This is saying you put in something non-integer, all right, for a customer number. And here, there's just a problem with a database, period. All right. And that could be a lot, conceivably a lot of different things. All right. So let's see. The other one that was in here was the customer invoice display. And again, that's the one we pretty much just looked at. All right. Well, that's not even, there we go. See, it's already coming up, not responding. So this is just hosed. I don't know exactly what happened with this. I am going to try to fix it. All right. But I'll tell you what, I'm just going to let you go for the day because this is a waste of my time and your time to do this. If I cannot get this fixed by tomorrow, I will come up with something else. All right. I'm going to lecture for at least an hour tomorrow and at least an hour on Thursday. And then Friday, like I said, we'll go through some MobiRise stuff. All right. So sorry about this. I don't know what the problem is. I'm going to keep trying to track down and see if I can figure out what it is. Feel free to just log off and I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.